Hey guys, and in this video here what I want to do is I kind of want to just introduce really the magnetic field. And in previous videos I've talked a lot about the electric field, and the electric field is something that's truly universal in my model, but I haven't really spoken too much about this magnetic field yet. And I just wanted to kind of take this opportunity to just kind of give you a little bit of my perspective on this, because my perspective is a little bit different. It's drastically different, actually, than what it is that we currently believe out there with the magnetic field, especially as it pertains to, the science of electrical engineering, because this is my field. And we've always been led to believe that this magnetic field is really a secondary kind of effect when we have electric charge in motion, in changing motion. And when we start to push electric charge through a wire, for example, like an alternating current that's being pushed through a wire, this produces the rotating magnetic field. So it's always been kind of a secondary effect, but in my model, I have a completely inverted model of this, where really the magnetic field really truly has center stage here. Because if you looked at my structured water part 1 video, you'll be able to see that I have a different theory about what it is that we believe the atom is made of. So really, this is really the most basic kind of substance of matter here, which is the atom. And we've always been led to believe that there's an electron kind of rotating around the atomic nucleus center. And I've proposed a different theory on that it's actually, I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's accurate at all. I think it's actually the rotating magnetic field that gives really the atom its kind of space volume here in this physical world. And this whole physical world here is all made up of atoms, according to physics and chemistry. So this really challenges the foundation here of our science, which is really fundamentally, it's electron theory. And I think it's important to kind of talk about this for a second, because electron theory it's about 100 years old now. It was something that kind of was pioneered by J.J. Thomson back maybe in the late 1800s. And they kind of were working this, and they've come up with this idea that there's an electron particle exists. And what's also important to note at that time too is that somebody else at the time too, Nikola Tesla, he was working on something completely different. And he did not believe in the theory of electrons in relative motion. And he was really working this rotating magnetic field model. He thought this was something primary here. That was something that we really needed to focus on. And he really dismissed the idea that there's electrons, moving and displacing distances through space. And what also is worth mentioning here too is that pretty much all of Tesla's work in the last 100 years has been it's been buried. But it was something big. Clearly it was something massive that he was trying to move towards. And like I said, this magnetic field was something primary here. I truly think this was something that was really truly universal in his model. And he was working that. He was doing experiment after experiment to kind of prove his theories. And he was getting closer and closer and closer. It's interesting that we've never heard any of that. It's all been basically buried, and we now have an electron theory that's kind of replaced it. And we have to wonder, we have to ask ourselves why? Why did that happen? What are we missing here? And is this electron in motion, in relative motion, does this have any truth to it? And I really wanted to kind of open off my kind of YouTube channel here, really talking about the electric field and kind of building a foundation here, because this is something that's fundamental. Because what I'm proposing here is that really the nature of electric charge, it has a very special place within space. It's just here in space. And I've kind of proposed that in my videos already on how we're kind of building a very incredible substance here that exists within space. And it's made of the electron family. And in my model, it becomes the source of that electric field. And it's something that's truly universal. And if that has any truth to it, then this magnetic field has to be part of that universal circuit. And this is the connection that I'm going to introduce here, so you can kind of get my perspective on how these two are kind of connected together. because we know that in electrical engineering, the electric field can produce the magnetic field. And this is connected to Faraday's Law, one of Maxwell's 4 laws of electromagnetism. So when there's a changing electric field that's happening here within space, this creates the magnetic field. I mean, it's very kind of basic here, what's going on here. So, and then we also believe that the opposite is true too. When we have a changing magnetic field, this can actually induce a changing electric field. So it's kind of bidirectional how this Faraday's Law kind of works here. So, and my model is it's connected into that, because we have this universal electric field that's made of this electron family that exists within space. And I've already shown you that it's made up of that muon particle and the electron. And it goes multiple levels deeper here, all the way down. It really becomes an infinite type of substance here, which becomes the true nature of electric current in my model. And it's the true nature of that electric field current. So we have this existing within space. So the magnetic field has to connect to that. And it's something that is, it's connected all around it here. And we saw how that electric charge unit is, it's really within this hexagonal type of crystal lattice in my model. So this hexagonal lattice becomes truly fundamental here. And this hexagonal type of crystal lattice, it really becomes like an interface, or like a coupling type of mechanism here that can interact with the physical world. But this electric field current also, it actually, the nature of a positive and negative charge, like they're within this one holistic substance. It's part of that. It's not separated. And it's not separated by any type of distance dimension either when we look at it fundamentally. And in my model, that's kind of how I'm looking at it here. It's really something that's just a truly universal substance here. And the magnetic field is really connected to this. And the way that I see the magnetic field working here with the electric field kind of in my model here, so you're going to need to kind of watch the first few videos on the electric field in my video series here, is that it almost works like a transistor. This is kind of how I describe it. It's almost like an inverted neutral transistor type of circuit here. Really the nature of the rotating magnetic field. And I see the gate terminal on this transistor. This is something that's actually electrically grounded right into this electric field circuit that I'm talking about here. Right into this fourth phase of matter, this plasma electric field dielectric current here that exists within space. That gate circuit on the transistor, it grounds right into that. So it's the connection between, it really becomes the connection between the physical world and a much more subtle world here that's not, it's where our 5 senses, your 5 senses can't get at this dimension of space that I'm talking about here. But there is a connection. And that is how I see that connection working here. And it becomes almost like a tuning circuit here, this gate circuit on the transistor that's connected into this electric field current. And the connection into the physical world is, in my model, it's through the proton. So that gate circuit goes right into the proton. And I've showed you in previous videos there that the proton, there is that electron family, it exists within the proton in the atomic nucleus. So the very nature of the electron and electric charge, it's inside the proton. It's not around it. So this is what I mean by, I'm looking at this, I'm kind of proposing an inverted model to what we currently believe today. So that gate circuit goes right into that, it's connected right into that proton. And that proton makes the connection into this non-physical world here, where the true nature of electric current is. So we're making a connection here between the nature of electric current and the rotating magnetic field here. So I think we're kind of beginning to understand really the nature of, Nikola Tesla's Tesla coil, on kind of fundamentally how that works. Because really what creates a magnetic field here is that we have a magnetic flux field that kind of diverges out of the North Pole, and then it kind of circles around and goes back into the South Pole. So there's this is the nature of this field activity here that's happening with the magnetic field. And like I said, that gate circuit here, it goes right, it's right in the center of the magnet. And right in the center of the magnet is in my model, is where that proton takes us into the nature of electric current. But what's important here too is that we also have to consider is, in one of Maxwell's laws, this is actually, there's one that's called Gauss's Law of magnetism. The nature of that magnetic field activity that's kind of projecting out of the North Pole and then coming back into the South Pole, that field activity is really essentially, it's always zero potential. No matter what, no matter where, it's always zero potential according to this law, which is something very fundamental here that's not really talked about enough, I don't think, because what we're beginning to see here, and at least from my perspective, is that we're almost making a true ground connection here with this activity, where we have a field kind of going downward and a field going upward, kind of the nature of this rotating magnetic field activity. And at every possible position within space, it's zero potential, is what this law is kind of telling us. So now we're kind of beginning to see in the center of the magnet is kind of representative of that proton. And then we have the magnetic field activity coming out. And now we're actually kind of creating a newer kind of perspective on what's going on within the atom. And it's not this electron field that's around it. It's actually the rotating magnetic field. And the field activity that's always maintaining that zero potential, this is something that's actually connected to the neutron in my model. And we have to remember that in our previous atomic theory, there was really only 3 particles that made up the very structure of the atom. And we had the atomic nucleus in the center, and it was made up of protons and neutrons. And then around the nucleus is where we had the electron. So you can see that I'm not really completely diverting away from that theory. I'm just showing you that it might be made of some different parts here. Now, coming back to this rotating magnetic field activity again, really there's in my model, the sourcing field of the magnetic field that comes out of the North Pole. This sourcing activity is actually what simulates essentially all the physical matter here in this universe. It's really just nothing more than just a play of magnetism. That's all it is. It's just magnetism, not a whole bunch of different electrons orbiting around the atomic nucleus. It's just really the field geometry that's taking place within this rotating magnetic field circuit. And it really simulates these 3 states of matter here, which is really a gas, a liquid, and a solid. And I've kind of touched this in my previous video on the electrical grounding current video that I did. And in my model, that's just a play of magnetism, all 3 of these states. So it changes things significantly here. And then it's this 4th phase of matter, which is this plasma. Again, this is where we have to go inside that first proton, which is the very first element on the periodic table. Go inside that proton. It takes you to the electron family. And I've shown you the muon, I've shown you the electron. There's multiple more levels to this. It doesn't stop here. And it becomes truly an infinite substance. It does not stop at the Planck length like what we see in Nazim Haraman's model. He seems to call this, he's connecting this to what's called a Planck field, a Planck plasma field. And he's on the right track, totally. I see where he's going with this, but in my model, this substance goes beyond the Planck length, and it becomes something that's truly infinite in its nature. This is really the most incredible substance of matter that exists in this whole universe. And this becomes the true nature of electric current. So now we have a connection with this 4th phase of matter with the connection to electric current. And then we have these 3 states of matter which make up this physical universe that we're in. And it's all just a play of magnetism. So it really becomes simple here. All we're dealing with is just the universal electric field. And now this rotating magnetic field becomes part of that universal circuit. And in all my work and in my writings, I go much more deeper into this in my blog posts, is that this universal field, it's really made up of three key ingredients in my model, at least in where my work is going. And those three ingredients are gravity, this fourth phase of matter, which is this dielectric plasma current, which unites the nature of electric charge, positive and negative, and then the rotating magnetic field circuit. This becomes the true universal circuit here that kind of is built within 3 dimensions of space. So we have to bring the space element back into this, and I'm trying to give this a little bit, some new perspective here to consider with the nature of space. And like I said, in my blog, I kind of go a little bit deeper into this to kind of define this with a little bit more detail, but I'm just putting it here just so you guys can kind of begin to see this. So coming back to this magnetic field, we have this sourcing component, this radiating type of component here that seems to be projecting out of the proton, simulating the 3 states of matter here and all the physical matter here that we interact with. And that rotating magnetic field is bidirectional in my model. So there's not just a sourcing field that's coming out, there's a sinking field that's coming inward as well. There's one that's going inward. So there's these 2 fields, and that's what makes the zero potential in Gauss's law of magnetism here. But it's that sinking field here in my model that actually makes the connection to antimatter. So now we kind of have a new theory that kind of shows you what the physical matter is made of, at the same time what the antimatter is made of. So there's a connection here, and it's all the rotating magnetic field. It's all a play of this in my work. And going back to this dielectric plasma current that exists within space here, that I've already kind of defined in the electric field series, this becomes the true nature of dark matter now in my model. So we have the connection here with the electric current, and then the rotating magnetic field circuit, which simulates the matter and the antimatter. So I know this is something completely different than what we're being taught out there today, but I just needed to put these ideas out there to you guys, because this is something I've been working on here for the last few years. And this model is really starting to kind of piece together here in my mind, and I just need to kind of get this out so you guys can kind of see it. And I really truly think this is something worth considering, and it's not something that's so far off compared to what we believe today. Because in my work, when we look at how this physical world is just built by magnetism, in our current model of particle physics, which is really kind of built by our understanding of quantum field theory, and this is why I talk about it so much in all my videos, is that this science tells us is that all the physical stuff here is just really a play of 12 different particle fields, which is kind of simulated by the quark, which is a representation of what's going on in the atomic nucleus, and this lepton family, which is this electron family. So it's not so far off here from what I'm suggesting, is that the only difference is that in my model, it's not 12 different particle fields, it's just one. And we also have to include Einstein's relativistic spacetime manifold here too, because this is connected into this true rotating magnetic field activity too. At least I think it is. Because the rotating magnetic field is really what gives volume to space. And since it's a changing field, a changing information field in my work, it's something that really simulates the nature of time. So what I think Einstein was trying to do here was just trying to model this universal primary rotating magnetic field circuit that Tesla was working on, and trying to put a more of a relativistic kind of spin on it. something that we could use based on our individual observer's perspective through the five senses. And I think Tesla's work was something that we had to go a little deeper inward here and kind of withdraw the five senses away. And this is where I think a lot of his works really starts to kind of emerge. And what's also interesting about this is that actually some physicists out there today actually believe that Einstein's relativistic space-time system, it's something that's not fundamental. And some physicists actually believe that space-time itself seems to emerge out of something much more fundamental. And I think that's very interesting because in my work, the Einstein space-time kind of system here is just trying to model the rotating magnetic field activity. That's primary in our background here. But in my work, that rotating magnetic field is something that's being generated and being produced by something much more fundamental, which is really the true nature of electric current, which is this fourth phase of matter, which is equivalent to dark matter in my model. So the physicists are, I believe they're right in the direction that they're going, in that this space-time system seems to emerge out of something. And it's not going to surprise me if they make that connection to dark matter, which I believe they probably will here in our near future. But I'm proposing to you guys something a little different. And then I put gravity into the mix because gravity is something that's even beyond that fourth phase of matter, beyond dark matter. It's something that's more fundamental than that. So we'll leave it at that. I don't want to talk too much about gravity in this video. I just wanted to kind of at least introduce it as being connected into this universal circuit that I'm trying to describe here. And the depth of where we need to go to get an understanding of gravity, I mean, it's a deep topic, and I'm just going to leave that aside for now. And there's a direction I want to go here, and there's some things I want to get to. And it has everything to do with my business and what this business I've started is based upon, which is really the nature of EMFs. They really have the potential to be really problematic for human physiology. And some touch points that I want to get to, some very specific ones that I want to get to, but this foundation needs to be introduced before I get there. You need to kind of see it, because I'm going to be moving on this and putting some more finishing touches on this to make some new connections.